And now, a story you can't afford to miss if you care about your health. It's about the serious consequences of basking in the sun. And we're not talking here about a few wrinkles. We're talking about a life-threatening disease, a type of cancer that has reached epidemic proportions today among young adults. And ironically, its victims can look deceptively healthy. As Dr. Timothy Johnson reports, that's because, like millions of others, they decided to ignore persistent warnings and follow the sun.
I didn't know how deadly it was or what it was, really. I discovered a mole on my chest wall here, and it started to bleed. So I made an appointment with a dermatologist, and she removed it and sent it to pathology. And a couple days later, it came back as a malignant melanoma.
John Sharp suffers from one of the most virulent of all cancers, the skin cancer known as malignant melanoma. His disease is the legacy of a lifetime of sun exposure.
I enjoyed the sun. I thought that a nice suntan was the best way to be. It was handsome and something you worked on to have a nice appearance with your suntan.
These days, the 38-year-old Californian and his wife Jennifer find it hard to look at people in the sun.
I think they're insane. I think they're insane. It happens, and it could be you. It's one of the fastest rising cancers in the country, and you really can't be too careful.
Just a generation ago, it was pale skin that was coveted. It was thought to be a sign of wealth, indicating someone who did not have to work outside. But slowly, American culture embraced the sun as an agent of beauty and health.
Mankind's age-old treasure hunt. The search for health and vitality in the beneficent rays of the sun.
Tanned skin became fashionable as sunbathing was touted as beneficial, and sun-tanned skin as a symbol of healthiness. Americans began an ongoing love affair with the sun.
The luxury of beautiful, but the tanning rays you want through.
But during the past 20 years, that love affair has turned deadly. Scientists say that 2 decades of excessive sun exposure has caused a staggering increase in the number of cases of skin cancer. Melanoma is now the most common cancer in the age group 25 to 29. And in some areas of the Sun Belt, the number of melanoma cases has actually doubled in the last 10 years. As Director of Cancer Prevention and Control at the Boston University Medical Center, Dr. Howard Koh studies cancer trends. He says the increase in melanoma cases is alarming.
This really qualifies as one of the cancer epidemics that we have in this society. And we also know that the official count is an undercount because of the way cancers are recorded in this country.
Malignant melanoma is the only skin cancer which often kills. Squamous and basal cell skin cancers usually rest on the surface of the skin. But melanoma often penetrates the skin surface and spreads throughout the bloodstream to other organs. Therefore, melanoma is much more likely to be fatal if it is not removed very early while it is still no thicker than a quarter. Dr. James Gale is a staff scientist at the Lovelace Institutes here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He is an expert on how ultraviolet rays can cause mutations in the genes of skin cells.
They'll destroy or disrupt important cellular genes, and that will lead to cells losing their control and eventually become cancerous.
Dr. Gale is trying to determine just how much sun exposure is dangerous and whether slow exposure to the sun can actually be protective. What's more critical, the intensity of your exposure or the length of your exposure?
It's been shown that people that are out all the time actually have a lower risk for melanomas, and that's probably because they do develop tans over time and they do have some protection. Whereas intermittent exposure, people that say go out only on weekends, they don't have time to develop tan, they get short bursts of exposure that are not protected by a tan, and they probably get more damage.
But make no mistake, getting a tan is potentially dangerous. Excessive sun exposure increases damage to the skin. Worse still, sun exposure usually results in sunburn. And remarkably, recent studies suggest that just 1 to 3 blistering sunburns before the age of 20 will double the risk of contracting malignant melanoma. That means past sun exposure has left a lot of baby boomers vulnerable to this fatal disease.
Even as a child, I would get severely sunburned.
Laura Abrams used to be a sun worshiper. As a child and a young adult, she enjoyed a summertime ritual of tanning and burning. Laura was 35 years old when she learned she had melanoma. Doctors told her what many melanoma victims are told, that survival was unlikely. Shocked, Laura and her husband Donald faced the grim diagnosis.
And it's like being slammed with a bus.
They did say, you know, there's always a chance, you never know, but they weren't really hopeful.
Death shadowed Laura's every moment as she searched for a treatment to prolong her life. By sheer chance, she learned of an experimental vaccine designed by Dr. Malcolm Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell is director of the Center for Biological Therapy and Melanoma Research at the University of California, San Diego. He knew that in advanced cases, when it is too late for surgery, that chemotherapy is also usually ineffective. So, 10 years ago, he began testing a vaccine to treat advanced melanoma.
Okay, gonna feel the stick?
This promising therapy is administered to patients who already have the disease as a way to stimulate the body's own defense against melanoma cells. By the time Laura met Dr. Mitchell, she was in the late stages of a rapidly spreading disease.
She had a leg full of disease. She had disease went all the way from her toes up through her buttocks on one side, on the right side. She had a nodule in her lung at that point. It already spread into her body.
Dr. Mitchell knew that his experimental vaccine was Laura's last resort. 7 weeks after treatment began, she saw dramatic evidence of its effect.
So I took my x-rays, and I'm standing there in the dressing room, and I held them up to the light, and there's like nothing on them.
And Laura demanded that someone confirm that those were her x-rays because she couldn't believe that the tumor could be gone.
And the guy goes in the back, he goes, "Oh, they're your x-rays." I said, "Yes, thank you."
So when I arrived on the scene, everybody was sort of, you know, they had the air of a surprise party. There was something they knew that I didn't know. I looked at the x-rays with amazement. It was gone.
Today, these people have reason to hope because of the vaccine treatment. Every year, old and new vaccine patients and their families gather at Dr. Mitchell's invitation to celebrate their continuing survival. The group, which calls itself the Melanoma Club, was inspired by Laura Abrams' 10 years of being cancer-free.
Laura Abrams is the reason why we had a cake. So for many reasons, and for more than I can even express, I wanted to acknowledge and to thank Laura Abrams from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Laura.
And she was the first of this group, but there are other people who've had complete remissions that have lasted for up to 8 years now.
Smiles on those gorgeous faces.
There are now 60 people taking the vaccine drug, which is awaiting approval by the Food and Drug Administration. All are hoping for a miracle of their own.
If you turn over one more time.
But melanoma is usually curable if people recognize the early warning signs. That's why doctors say it's crucial to conduct periodic self-exams for unusual changes in the skin, as well as changes in the size, color, shape, or texture of a mole.
Get everybody involved.
Dr. Howard Coe.
This is a unique opportunity for cancer detection because this is an external, visible cancer. There's a saying, melanoma writes its message in the skin with its own ink for everyone to see. So you don't have to be a physician, you don't have to be a health professional to find melanoma early.
However, some recent surveys indicate that too many Americans still don't get it. For example, the American Academy of Dermatology interviewed 1,000 adults. 1/3 of them said they never examined their skin for signs of melanoma. Another third said they didn't even know what it was. And in a survey of some teenagers, half of them admitted that they still actively seek a tan.
Your UV index for today, this is 8.1, and
The Centers for Disease Control now supplies 58 cities with a daily ultraviolet ray index, which describes the risk for unprotected skin.
The UV index is 8? That's high. Whew, I could burn in 15 minutes.
Hollywood stars have lent their talent to a public service announcement now running in movie theaters.
For a luxurious tan that's never at the expense of beautiful skin, indulge in bain de soleil.
And bowing to the changing American culture,
Because you think you look great with a tan, knowing it's not great for your skin.
the manufacturers of suntan lotions have shifted their focus to producing sun blocks.
So one application protects you all day.
But Dr. Coe says sunscreens are just a part of a complete safe sun strategy.
People shouldn't rely simply on sunscreens, but also use protective clothing, use hats, try to stay out of the sun in the midday when it's the most harsh. We all are fearful that people will feel too secure if they use sunscreens alone. Having said that, they're about as good a cancer prevention tool as we have right now. I think if people are serious about skin cancer prevention and melanoma prevention, they should use it.
I just feel something.
That's advice John wishes he had followed before it was too late.
I'm John Sharp, and I have melanoma.
As he fights a daily battle to stay alive, John draws strength from his support group at the Wellness Community in Santa Monica, California.
Are you able to talk about these kinds of feelings with your family?
The group, All Cancer Sufferers, provides comfort as he braces for the inevitable.
It was easy for me to handle the fact that I had a brain tumor and I could go like that for some reason. But the idea of going one piece at a time and suffering and watching those around me suffer, it's very difficult. It hurts. The sun is not something to be worshipped. It'll kill you.
That is a cruel disease, there's no doubt. But isn't it true that at a certain stage, it is curable?
Oh, absolutely, and we have to emphasize that message. That's why it's so important to self-examine and, when necessary, have a physician look at any suspicious area, because if you can catch it early, while as we said it's still thinner than a quarter, before it spreads and starts to spread throughout the body, it is absolutely curable with surgery. Sometimes takes a fairly wide excision, major surgery, but it can be cured.
Now, in view of the fact that sunlight, no doubt, is the major culprit here, but people can get that melanoma without being exposed to the sun.
Well, melanoma can show up, for example, in the bottom of the feet or other areas that are always covered, but the major cause that we can do anything about is the sun, and we think that the majority of melanomas are clearly caused by the sun, or that the sun contributes to them. So we got to stay out of the sun and control it.
Good advice. Thank you, Tim. Well, next, a family matter that working parents everywhere fight about. In this age of equality between mom and dad, who really takes care of the kids? John Stossel with an issue that's sure to hit home after this.